Hello and welcome. You're listening to Start Again with Shaunna Lee, the place where you will be reminded that it's never too late and you're never too old to do the damn thing. So stick around if you're ready to vibe higher and be inspired to chase your dreams. Together, we will uncover your soul's truest desires. Now, if you're ready, let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode. Today, I am introducing you to Angie Hyche. She is an author and a podcast host, and we are going to talk all about uncluttering your life. So, the name of her book is Unholy Mess: What the Bible Says About Clutter, and her podcast is called Uncluttered: Shaping Your Heart and Home for What Matters Most. Angie, thank you for being here.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here, Shaunna Lee.
Absolutely. I am super excited to dive into this topic today. Like we were discussing before we hit record, it's a tricky subject here, this whole decluttering, because it's never really about the stuff that you can physically see, although that's the most obvious. So let me give you an opportunity to say hello to my audience, tell them a little bit about who you are and kind of where you're coming from, and we'll start from there.
All right, sounds good. Yes, I'm Angie Hyche. I am a certified professional organizer, author, speaker, and podcaster, and I live in East Tennessee. And I had an interesting career all over the map in education and in medicine, and kind of started with a new profession in 2016 when I founded my organizing company, ShipShape Solutions, and worked with clients and homes and some businesses for many years. And now, starting in the beginning of 2023, I decided I wanted to have more time for the writing and the speaking and the podcasting. So I don't go into client homes anymore. I still do some volunteer organizing for nonprofits just to keep my hands in stuff. And, but I love to talk about clutter and all the different types of clutter, not just the stuff, but the clutter in our schedule and the clutter in our minds and the ways that it distracts us. I'm really passionate about this topic because I have seen how deeply clutter can affect us, all the different types, including myself. And I've also seen the freedom that comes from letting that clutter go.
Yes. Yes. Very important. And one of the first questions I like to ask people, and I suspect this is probably part of your becoming an author story, but how have you embraced this idea of starting again?
Okay, so when my husband and I have been married 36 years, and when so my first career in medicine, when I started that, and then I really didn't get to practice that very long before we started our family, and I knew I wanted to stay home with them for a while. So during that time, I still was taking continuing ed so I could keep my medical career for a while. But at a certain point, I had been out of the profession for so long that I just didn't feel confident going back into medicine. So I was doing some volunteering I volunteered at their schools, the library and the clinic and the classroom and all that. And then I uh, started an interesting hobby of acting in community theater. And it's one of those things that if you try it, sometimes you just get bit by the bug and it's just very addictive and fun.
Yep.
So while volunteering at the theater, um, I noticed that one of the theaters that I was very active at, the room where they had stored their costumes and props and set pieces was a complete disaster. And it
Yep.
just really drove me crazy. So they had a part time employee, and I found out that she was really bothered by this too. And so once I met her, I said, you know what? I would love to help you tackle this room. I can volunteer my time. And so the two of us took weeks and weeks and went through everything the theater owned. They had this room was fairly large, and then there were about 8 closets, and they also were paying rental on a storage unit that they didn't even know what was in there. And so over this period of time, we got all these tables out, we spread everything out, put it in categories, went through every single thing. And it was just the biggest mess. And in the thick of that, I said, "This is so much fun. I just want to do this every day." Um, and at that time, I didn't know that people actually did this
Yep.
thing of organizing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, so I did a little research, found NAPO, which is National Association of Productivity and Organizing Professionals. Um, Found out a little bit more about it, talked to some people, and realized, okay, if I want to do this as a job, I can't just go interview somewhere. It's going to mean starting my own business. And that
Yeah.
was very intimidating to me,
Oh, sure.
especially having come off of many years of, being home raising children, not being in a corporate world. Um, but when my husband and I did something kind of safe for a little while. I went back into education and was an elementary school teaching assistant. But I couldn't get this out of my head, this idea of organizing. So we would talk about it so much. And so when we hit empty nest phase of life and kind of had a little bit more time, we had this monumental conversation on a bicycle trail in Georgia, and it was time for me to either recommit for the next school year or opt out. And so my husband said, I know you are intimidated at the thought of starting a business, but I think people less intelligent and driven than you start businesses all the time.
All the time.
We're in a position where you can take a chance. If it doesn't work, then you go back to teaching or whatever, but I'm behind you. I really think you can do this, and I think you're gonna regret it if you don't give it
If
a
you don't.
try.
Yep. Yep.
And so it just felt like the biggest step of faith. That was in the spring of 2016, and it was the scariest and most amazing thing I've ever done.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I
And
love it.
yeah, yeah, I loved it. And, but even since 2016, I've kind of like reinvented myself within that to kind of go more to the writing and the speaking and the podcasting. And I think I've discovered I kind of like the process of reinventing myself.
Yes. Yes.
Um,
Well, and
yeah,
what I have realized and found to be true is that in each of those big scary steps that feel monumental, we look at them in hindsight and we're like, "Oh my gosh." Like, yeah, it was a big deal and I did take a leap of faith, but like it wasn't nearly as scary as I thought it was going to be, or it turned out
right.
so much better than I could have imagined. But I think we build our confidence in ourselves, and we get a little more secure in listening to that voice that's been nudging
Yes.
us the whole time. And the
Hmm.
more we do it, the better at it we get. And then I think that's where that reinventing yourself comes from, because then you're like, oh gosh, now what can I do? If I did this,
Hmm.
and if you had looked back in the beginning and said, oh, you're going to write a book about decluttering one day, you probably would have thought, what?
Yeah. No, I can't write a book. Just like I said, I
So
can't start a
let's,
business. Who am I?
yeah,
Yeah, I can't do that.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, but one step leads to another step leads to another step. So you
Yes.
don't go all the way, from raising babies to writing the book about the business. You had to start the business and you had to do the volunteer work and the part-time and the here and this and that, and it all leads to this beautiful destination. So speaking of, why don't you tell us a little bit about your book?
Okay, sure. So when I started the business, I started blogging and I started speaking mainly as a way to get clients, 'cause that's what I was centered on. And one of the presentations that I wrote and gave in small church group settings, I called it The Spiritual Implications of Clutter, because I had realized um, pretty quickly that kind of done some research on clutter and looked up some scripture and realized, okay, this is more than just stuff. There's a lot of depth here. So I did that presentation. I really, really liked it. And I felt like there was way more to the topic than what I was covering in this presentation. And another thing was I went to an organizers conference, a NAPO conference, and I was talking to one of the presenters about how they are able to get more presentations. And one thing that this person said was, well, if you're a published author, sometimes that gives you more credibility. Um, and so at that point, I had been writing a monthly newspaper column in a couple of local papers for several years. And I thought, well, maybe I could do that. I don't know. I mean, writing books seems like a lot, but this whole spiritual side of it was very intriguing to me. And so that's what kind of gave me the idea to write the book. Um, I knew I didn't necessarily know what I was doing as far as that was concerned. So I did hire someone to kind of coach me through the process of the writing and then to help me with the edits and help me get it published. Um, and then once I did that, then got contacted by someone about working together on another book. And so now that's it's kind of like my thing that I love.
Yeah.
But I never would have known I loved it unless I just started it in a small way. And what
Yes.
actually my writing started not even with my business. I'd forgotten about this. Back when I was teaching assistant in elementary school, there was an email sent to all the staff that the local newspaper was looking for volunteers to contribute to the food column of the paper. And they needed people to just write about, like, share a recipe, maybe if there's a story about it or whatever. And I said, well, that sounds fun. I think
Yeah.
I could do that.
Yeah.
So I started writing that column, and it was there were quite a few volunteers, so it wasn't a very big time commitment. So then when I started my business, I thought, I wonder if readers would enjoy a column like that. And I knew that, like, my favorite magazine is Real Simple, and they always have an article about
Yes.
organizing,
Yeah.
which was, of course, my favorite. So I thought, I'll just pitch this and see if they're interested.
Yeah.
So I talked to that. First, I emailed and called and emailed and called and emailed and called and left messages. And then my sister convinced me to take the very brave step of just going there face to face.
Oh, in person.
And yes, where I couldn't be ignored. So I came in, it was scary. I said, you probably recognize my name because I've been leaving you a bunch of messages. And I'm sorry to come in unannounced, but I really feel like I've got something that your readers would enjoy. And I've been writing for the food page. So I meet my deadlines, and I'd already been blogging. These are the kinds of articles that I could provide. And so I would like to talk about having a column. And that was early 2017. And I've now written 109 articles. What's month? But then it's funny because the food column led to the organizing column, which led to a book, which then ended up leading to a podcast. So it's so cool. Like, when you get an idea, you get an urge for something, whether it's start a business, write a book, whatever. And if it won't go away, you know, if that urge just keeps coming back, you got to do something about it, even when it's scary.
Yes. I say that all the time. And I'm like, it's the
Yeah.
little thing that's nagging you that you've always
Yes.
thought about and you keep pushing it away, but
Hmm.
it won't go away. That's the one to listen to.
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
I love how much of your story is highlighting that you can start small and you can do one tiny little thing. Like some of those steps in your journey were huge leaps of faith and
Yeah.
definitely felt like risky and scary and all of that good stuff. But some of it was just like, oh, that sounds fun. Maybe I'll try that. And I feel like if more people would lean into the oh, that sounds fun, it would like the path lights itself. And so then that leads to
Hmm.
something else. And you just kind of follow, they say follow your bliss. I never really was able to identify with bliss necessarily, but the, oh, let me play with this idea or that sounds fun, that I can
Hmm.
get behind. And I think that's really,
Right.
that was highlighted in your story time and time again. And I love that.
Yeah. And I think it also, another component that I think is kind of key, each step along the way, there were many times where I said, okay, this is something I really want to do, but I know I don't know what I'm doing. And so what is available to me? So before starting my business, I found out there was I'm in Kingsport, Tennessee, and there's a place called Kingsport Office of Small Business Development and Entrepreneurship. It was basically like someone who wants to start a small business, free resources available to you.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so I said, "Well, okay, that sounds like exactly what I need." So I'll come in and talk to Andrea Wilcox, who's in charge of it, and say, "Okay, I want to start a business as an organizer. I have no clue what I'm doing. Can
Right.
you help me? Just like, what do I need? Like insurance and license, and I'm sure there's a bunch of things I never thought of." And uh, so there's almost always someone somewhere that you can just, if you're willing to just say, "Hey, this is what I want to do, and I need help. Who do I need to go to?"
Yep.
I couldn't have done it without her help. I mean, my husband's been just amazing, and
Yeah, we need
so.
those cheerleaders in our life to kind of push us along and tell us we can do it and kind of cheer us on. But I think a lot of times people forget you're not reinventing the wheel here. And there's people who have
Mhm.
built careers and businesses around helping people do the things that you don't know how to do. So sometimes it's just
Yes.
a matter of a quick Google search or asking asking the question, and the path will be opened for you. But sometimes you
Mhm.
have to be able to speak up and ask for help because I think a lot of
Yes.
times we have this impression that we should be able to figure it out on our own. And while yes, that is certainly one option, the easier path is to ask for some help.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of times people, if they think about potentially working with an organizer, they'll be stopped for a long time by saying, "I should be able to do this."
Oh,
And
yes.
it's like, "Oh,
There's so much
okay,
shame in
whatever."
that.
Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
know. Like, I mean, I would never say I should be able to plumb or wire my own home. I mean,
Right.
obviously, I'm gonna have to get help with that. And definitely, there is no shame in saying, "Hey, I wanna write a book. I don't know what I'm doing. Please help." Just whatever it is, don't be afraid to ask for help because, uh, if you let that stop you, you're
Mhm.
just gonna have that same nagging thing.
Yeah.
Nope, this is, and I feel like as a Christian, I feel like that is God prompting you, like,
Yes.
you've got the tools and the passion and the desire, and this is something I have for you, but you got some hurdles to go over, so,
Yeah.
be willing to ask for help, and it's okay.
Yes, absolutely. And I think another thing that's highlighted in those examples is that you found a lot of joy and satisfaction in the act of clearing out clutter from a space. Whereas most
Mhm.
people do not feel that way. And so
Mhm.
being able to lean on people who, like, I have a really good friend who had an organizational business for a long time. And she was the same way. She would get so excited and fired up when she saw a messy space. I'm going to say messy
Oh,
space.
yes.
She was like,
Yes.
because she saw the potential and she knew
Mhm.
what freedom came from clearing that space. And she knew
Mhm.
like that was what fired her up. And so being able to, one, kind of lean into, okay, I need help with this space or this part of my life that I'm struggling with, because, like you mentioned, clutter is not just physical stuff in your space. But being able to lean on people who get excited about helping you with that is critical. And I think that's when you definitely want to pull in a professional. But I wanted us to kind of talk about that a little more because I like this idea of opening people's eyes, kind of lifting the veil to decluttering your space is not just about physical stuff. And what comes from that work, so to speak, is the sense of freedom and relief and really
Mhm.
opening yourself up to the possibilities. So I was hoping you might talk to that a little bit more.
Yeah, sure. And there's so much psychology behind the process of decluttering and just our relationship with our possessions. Oh my goodness. I feel like a good undergrad for an organizer would be psychology, also business management,
Sure.
but um and it kind of depends on the category of things, but a lot of times our clutter is a result of kind of a lack of faith in a way. I better keep this just in case because I don't know where I'm going to be a few years from now. I may be at a point economically where I can't afford to go get this, you know,
Yes.
or it could kind yeah, I mean that is a definite stumbling block sometimes. Or here's one that I had trouble with. One of the so my husband and I went from our home where we raised our girls into a small downtown loft, and we
Oh.
got rid of 75% of our
Oh,
things.
wow.
And it was incredible. We loved it. I think only 2 of the hundreds and hundreds of things have I actually wished I hadn't gotten rid of, but
Yeah.
overall it was fantastic.
Yeah, yeah.
But and here's a psychology thing. One of the things that was the most difficult for me to get rid of was my this is so funny, my old high school and middle school and college trophies for
Oh,
volleyball, basketball, softball. You think,
interesting.
"Okay, well, how silly is that? Why did you want to hold on to your trophies?" Well, if you think about the psychology of this, that was just the biggest part of my life during middle school, high school, college. That was how I defined myself,
Oh,
by being not only doing well in school, but doing well in sports and winning the trophies. And, it was kind of like external validation that, okay, you're good. You're contributing to a team and that team is winning.
yeah.
But obviously those trophies were doing nothing for me physically. They were just in a big bin in the attic,
Right.
not doing anyone any good. But for some reason that was hard. And so what I had to realize was that the things that we keep from past periods of our life are getting in the way of like embracing who I am now and who I am going to be in the future. I
Yes.
don't need those trophies. I've got the memories, that came from those events. But right now, what God has for me now is something very different. And I don't need these things. They're in my way. They are a distraction. That's what I always say about clutter, whether it's in your home or office, in your schedule or in your mind. It is a distraction from your priorities.
Yep.
So if I'm hanging on to my past, one symptom of that with my trophies, I'm not making space for either literally or figuratively what is going on in my life now or in the future.
Right.
Um, there's just so much, with sentimental items is especially difficult. And you see many times people have things from their parents or their grandparents
Yep.
or an ex or whatever, and they just have a hard time letting go. But when they do, whether it's the trophies or the things from a loved one that uh, you don't need to keep all of it. Maybe you keep some of it to remember, but I'm going to move forward
Yeah.
because I want to, embrace what is going on in my life now and what the future holds.
Yeah.
And there's so much freedom in that.
There is, and I often are, most of the people that I work with are trying to call in something new. They are wanting, I work with
Mhm.
women after divorce. And so they're potentially wanting a new career. They want a new partner. They
Mhm.
want, something new in their life. And by holding on to that old stuff, um, even, I mean, you talked about your mind, like holding on to old beliefs can be another one. But when we're
Mhm.
holding on to those things, when we learn to let go of them or purge out the limiting belief or get rid of your ex's things, whatever is kind of mucking up your space, it clears room and it creates space
Mhm.
for the new to come in. And so a lot of times it's just through the act of like cleaning out a closet or emptying your garage that then you're able to meet the person that is your new relationship. Like it's interesting how they're all connected, but you wouldn't necessarily think,
Mhm.
oh, I want to call in a new partner. Let me go clean my garage. But they can be
Exactly.
very connected when you're just removing the clutter.
Yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it? It's
Mhm.
fascinating
Mhm. It really is.
how all those, different facets of our life are related.
Yes. Oh, it's always related. Yeah. Well, so
Yeah.
what has surprised you most about this journey of yours to become a business owner and author?
Wow, that's a great question. What has surprised me most? I don't know if I'm gonna say this. Yeah, okay. So this is going back to the trophies, which is
Yes.
weird.
Yes.
So the trophies were also important to me because I was and am an extremely competitive person.
Mm.
So for me to have those trophies as validation of, yes, you were the most valuable or
Yeah.
whatever
Yeah.
player. Um, so coming into being a business owner and especially being involved with NAPO organizers all over the country, all over the world, um, I think one of the biggest challenges for me is like figuring out, okay, well, what is my walk here as an organizer? What does that mean? Because I see people that are, lead a big team of organizers and, they have multiple employees and, they're making X amount of money and they're getting featured on, this podcast, this radio program, this TV show, whatever. Um, and I don't think I went into it necessarily thinking, oh, well, I will definitely have that level of success. But part of me kind of wanted it. And so I have to kind of really watch myself because when I read about and see other people's success, it's just like, oh, this little, just a little jab in there. Because I used to say, oh, yeah, I would love to grow to the point of having multiple employees and just being managing and not necessarily going in the homes. Then I think, but would I really?
Hmm.
How would I have done with that? Honestly. So my husband and I live in this small town that we grew up and our parents are still here. We're fortunate for 4 of our 5 parents to be here. My parents divorced when I was young. And when I think about the times when my schedule was not very busy and I was thinking like, "Oh, I can't believe I don't have clients right now. What is going on? What about
Hmm.
all these organizers that say, "Oh, my schedule's booked for 6 months."
Yeah. Yeah.
And here I am like next week I don't even have anybody on the books. But then my stepfather has to have major surgery and they need someone to drive them to this and I have medical experience
Yeah.
and I have time.
Yep.
And so I know that, you know what? My role was not to be the one leading a big team. My role was to be having a smaller part with my business and having the availability to be there for my family.
Yeah.
Especially the older I get, I lost my father about a month ago
Oh my
and,
goodness. I'm sorry.
and I had to, I, no, I got the joy to. He had to go within like a few weeks' time from independent living in an apartment to assisted living
Mm.
because of some health issues. And so, because I had experience helping people declutter and move into smaller spaces, I was able to spend weeks with him going through all this stuff, getting him set, going to appointments, knowing how to answer the question, ask the questions and explain it to him as a physician, uh, because of my experience in medicine as a PA. Um, so I guess the surprise to me is that time and time again, even though I see I was exactly where I was supposed to be helping him.
Hmm.
Yet when I hear about someone else's successes, I have to just remind myself again, no, that's not the role that you're supposed to be
Hmm.
in right now.
Yeah.
This is where you're supposed to be and to be okay with that and knowing that that was what I was designed to do.
Yes. And you're hitting on so many important things. I think our idea of what success looks like
Mhm.
is, first of all, it's different for everyone. It's not always,
Mhm.
I was just having this conversation the other day. It's not always the dollars in your bank account or the
Yes.
prestigious award or the, featured publication. Sometimes the success is that you get to be available for your family. And this was the conversation I was having with my friend was you are here for your children in this period of their life when they're it's almost over. Like this idea of them living full time in your
Mhm.
house is short lived. And so, her kids are in high school and she's like, I get to be the one to drive them to and from all the many things. And
Mhm.
she's like, I feel like a taxi driver, but at the same time, that's when we have our best conversations and I don't want to miss
Oh,
that.
yes.
And so, if she was off, because she was lamenting about how her business wasn't doing what she wanted it to do monetarily, but what it was
Right.
doing for her was allowing her the time to be with her kids. And so I'm like, when you said you started this business, this was the key reason, this was your why. And I said, so we have to come back to this idea of what does success look
Mhm.
like, because sometimes we get lost, I think. And also,
Yes.
our definition of success can change. And the other thing I will say about seeing other people do things that give you that little like twinge is,
Mhm.
for me, the most prevalent time that I've had this happen was when after my third divorce, had finally decided I was ready to be in a relationship again. And I was manifesting this man. For everyone listening, I'm using quotation marks. And I was calling in this new relationship with intention on purpose. And then I would see all these posts from my friends in social
Mhm.
media about their 15th wedding anniversary or the new boyfriend they just met or whatever the case may be. It was like love was being flaunted in front of me.
Mhm.
And I had this shift one day where I said, okay, instead of me having that twinge of jealousy, I'm going to say, I call God, the universe, and angels all together. I will just say, thank you, universe. Thank you, God, like that. Yes, that's what I'm calling in. Yes, that's the example of what I want. And so I started using it as it was just a simple reframe in my mind, but I used it
Mhm.
as a reason to say, yep, that's also what I want. Yes, thank you. And it
Mhm.
brought a sense of gratitude and it just shifted the feeling behind it for me, which was
Hmm.
so helpful because then I wasn't, crabby and jealous when I was seeing people post their
Mhm.
cutesy photos of themselves with their new little love. Um, but also it got me to really focus on what I was calling in and to do that on purpose and to further refine what I wanted it to look like, which I think
Mm.
is always really helpful as well.
Yeah, that I think that reframing is so important. I listen to a lot of other podcasts. I'm a little bit of a podcast
Yeah.
junkie, and I think sometimes we don't realize how much power we have over our thoughts and how our thoughts affect us so deeply.
Yeah.
To be able to just say, I'm not going to go there anymore. There it goes again.
Yep.
There goes that jealousy
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
And to be able to say, I'm glad for her
Hmm.
or for him because it looks like she has met a goal that that she has set. And so good for her.
Hmm.
And that's okay that that's not for me.
Hmm.
And there's a reason that it's not happening for me because God knew that I needed to be here
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
my father. Um, and so I'm grateful. But it's like I have to remind myself of that maybe not every day, but at least once a week.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, because
Yeah.
shifting our beliefs and our thoughts it is no small feat. And it
Mm.
takes
Mhm.
repetition and it does take some time. Well,
Absolutely.
speaking of time, okay, so from where you sit in your journey today, what advice would you give the younger you?
Mm. I would say stop assuming you can't do that.
Oh, that is a good one.
I remember this conversation. This was when I was an undergrad at Tennessee Tech. Um, there were some people in my dorm that were pre-med majors, and at the time, I think I was pre-physical therapy. Um, And I remember someone asking, "Have you thought about med school?" And I said, "Oh gosh, no, I could not do I couldn't do that."
Yeah.
Where did that come from?
Yeah.
I don't know. You know, this business, like, "Oh, well, you'd have to start a oh, well, I can't do that."
Yeah.
Or, write
Yeah,
a
that's
book. "Oh, well, I could never write a book." And then even after I wrote a book,
uh-huh.
I published it, and then I thought, "Okay, I'm gonna try something different. I wanna make up a story." So I'm working on a play featuring a professional organizer helping her mom declutter
Oh,
and
fun.
downsize. But before I took years for me to go, "Oh, well, my brain doesn't work that way."
Yes.
I might be able to write, self-help kinda Christian stuff, but I could never make up a story. Why did I think that?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I guess I would tell myself, "Stop assuming you can't do it."
Yeah, for sure. That's so good. And not to I'm going to go back a little bit because I'm just realizing um I don't want to give away the meaty part of your book obviously, but what does the Bible say about clutter? Can you give us one little tip?
Oh, wow. So, interestingly enough, the word clutter isn't even in the Bible.
Uh-huh.
So, but they just didn't really use that word.
Yeah, yeah.
But when you think about the way that our things and our time and our thoughts distract us and we put them above our relationship with God and our relationship with others, the Bible is filled with that concept. One of my favorite scriptures is in Luke 12. There's a person that is having a conversation with Jesus. Telling Jesus, "Please tell my brother to share the inheritance with me." And Jesus is like, "Who am I? An arbiter?" And he says to beware because of what the effect that money can have on us. And then he tells us this parable about this person, this farmer who had a huge bumper crop and all of the grain would not fit in the barn. And so he was trying to figure out what to do. And he says, "Here's what I'll do. I'll just down my barn and build bigger barns, and then I'll have plenty stored up. And I'll say, you can just eat, drink, be merry. You're good. You're taken care of for a while." And then Jesus says, "Well, you are a fool because you're trusting in that, and who knows, it may be taken away tomorrow." Whether it, and here we are, we may not be able to relate to eh, bigger barns, but we can relate to the excess that we have
Yep.
in this country. Uh, you know, of the storage units in the world, America owns over 90% of them.
Hmm.
And there's so much space inside storage units that every man, woman, and child in America could fit in them at the same time.
That's crazy.
So we are a culture of excess.
Yeah.
And even if you're not talking about stuff, like we fill our homes, but we fill our schedules. I mean, we just fill.
Oh, the
We're
schedules.
we're
Yes.
stuck on our phones.
Uh-huh.
We're just more and more and more and more. And then we wonder why we get all stressed out.
Yeah.
And so I think the Bible is really clear about what's most important and how to filter out the other things so that we can pay attention to what's most important.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Thank you for humoring me in the
Mhm.
last question. Um,
Sure.
well, so when you look forward and you think about what's next, whether it is a new venture and a new type of writing or whichever thing you might decide is next for you, what do you now believe is possible for your own life?
You know, I've gone from, "Oh, well, I couldn't do that. I could never do that."
Mhm.
And now I kind of feel like, you know what? If that's something God's calling me to do and he's putting that urge in me, and I have a support network that can, when I know I need help, I can call on various people. There's really no limits.
Yep.
If it's something that God has equipped me and I've got people around me, then I can't wait to see what new journeys I might go on.
Yeah. Man,
It's
life
exciting.
sure does get fun when you have that outlook to
Yeah.
it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's such a better place to be.
Yes. Oh, 100%.
And it may also mean, I may go down one path and think like, "Oh, I'm going to just, kick it here and it's going to be awesome and I'm going to
Yeah.
be so successful. And then I'm going to realize, no, that's not the kind of success that you were meant to have. And so I'm
Yeah.
going to pull back my expectations, a constant adjustment. Um,
Yeah.
but
Well, and I also think there's an element of we get to change our minds. So
mhm,
just because I went to school to get a business degree and I wanted to go into corporate America, and then I changed my mind and decided I wanted to write books and help people instead, like, okay, you can do that. Like we get to
mhm,
change our minds. And I like
yes.
to tell people that when they're in the midst of a difficult choice between choice A and choice B. And there's always this element of we think we're going to get it wrong somehow. And I'm like, choose the one that speaks to your soul, choose the one that seems the
Mhm,
most fun. And if you get 3 steps into that part of the process and you don't like it, you can change your mind. Like you get to
mhm,
decide again. And I think life is just filled with those opportunities to say, okay, I wrote this book and now, oh, do I want to make an audiobook? Okay, maybe. And just being able to let that lead you to the next thing and then you get to choose and decide all over again. I think
mhm.
that's an
So
amazing
true.
answer. Yeah.
So true.
Well, so my last question is how can people find you?
Oh, well, that's easy.
Yes.
You can head to my website, which is shipshape.solutions. Um, and I've got all my articles that I've written over the last 7 years are on there. Some videos, my blog. I've got an email newsletter, but I've also got with my co-host Leanna George that we have the podcast. We have a website uncluttered.faith. Lots of resources on there. We've got a blog. All our podcasts are linked to there. And I love, love, love to talk about organizing and decluttering and simplicity and challenges people have. Shoot me an email. I will converse about anything in that arena. So my email is Angie@shipshape.solutions. And I love to get to know people and to help them solve whatever they've got going on in their
Yeah,
lives.
that's great. That's great. Well, I appreciate that on behalf of my listeners. And I am so thankful that you spent time with me today. So thank you for being here.
Oh, it has been a joy. Just such a pleasure, Shaunna Lee. Thank you.
Did you like this episode or did you love it? Inquiring minds want to know. The best way to support this show is to subscribe and leave a review. I can't wait to hear what you have to say. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.